Welcome back to this week's edition of Inimitable Impact Podcast. Today, we have a very special guest. Kate, who we got on today?
So Damon West, who wrote The Coffee Bean and The Change Agent. And The Change Agent, if you're not familiar with Damon West, by the way, he was sentenced to a life in prison. Life in prison. In case you're not aware, he is no longer in prison. He is going around inspiring a lot of people. And he wrote a book with John Gordon about the coffee bean. This is a great, awesome, short illustrated fable and awesome metaphor for life about the carrot, the egg, and the coffee bean. And he's going to talk to us about his journey. He's going to tell us about his impact moment. He has two. And he's going to bring us through a mindset that got him through maximum security prison, through the parole board, through the journey that he's taking after getting out of prison early, and what he's doing with his life. So there are so many takeaways in here that are going to be relevant. And let's go. Let's dig in.
Let's get it started. Yep.
Okay.
In 3, 2, 1, impact.
All right, welcome back to the Inimitable Impact Podcast. We are here with Trent. Who are we here with besides Trent?
I think you guys know us, man. Yeah, Damon West, one of my favorite books, author. So excited to have him on the show today.
Man, thanks a lot. That really makes me feel good, Trent and Kate. I mean, that's the coffee bean. Look, I mean, John Gordon, that's the obvious connection between all of us right here. And Kate, you just had a best-selling book come out with John Gordon called Stick Together. But yeah, the coffee. There you go.
he's promo man.
Yeah, do you tell her it's your favorite book when I'm not here, Trent? I want to know.
No comment. I plead the fifth.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes, he does.
Smart guy. But yeah, thanks for having me on your show today. Thanks for spending your time with me today.
Yeah, you got it. You know what? Before I ask you, some questions about. I'm going to ask you about what you're doing, because I know you're traveling quite a bit, and I can't ever keep up with all the places you're going and all the people you're talking to. But I got a question for you. So do you remember there was a Eminem song back in the day about the real Slim Shady, please stand up? Okay, well, here's what I want to ask. I got this picture, and I'm wondering if you could tell me which one is the real Damon West. Okay, you ready? Quiz.
Yeah.
Okay. Which one?
I love it. It's gonna be the coffee bean guy over there.
What is it? Is this one over here?
Yeah, that's the one, the coffee bean guy.
All right, like which one are you today? I'm like, this is very.
Well, you know what? No, look, a while ago I was the egg, because I was finishing up I was working on some website updates. Like when I say website updates, revamping my whole website. And so when I say today, I meant the last 3 days. So yeah, I'm definitely was the egg guy behind you. Is it irritated? Okay. Yeah. So right. It's done. So now that it's done, I'm the coffee bean guy.
Back to the coffee bean. This is my favorite hairdo, to be honest.
I love that.
You should trademark that and probably sell it.
That is really cool. I can put that on the shirt.
I'm going to send you that picture because,
Please do. I was about to ask you for it. So
yeah, absolutely. So if anybody is just listening to this, we'll have to put that on our website because
it's interesting.
Go ahead.
It's interesting. You talk about the real Slim Shady. So we're working on the movie project with like a Netflix 10-part series kind of thing.
Ooh,
and cool. So we're in conversations right now with Eminem and his people about, him doing the music on it. We'd like to get him to act. We got to get a script in front of him. So he said, he's got to see the script first to act in it. So maybe the real Slim Shady.
Oh, he's got to say yes.
The real Damon West in a Netflix 10-part series. So.
Oh my gosh! All right. Well, yeah. I would, I won't hold you to this, but if I can get an invite to that set just for one day, I'd be super excited.
I'd like to get an invite.
Right? No, me first. I love it. All right, very cool. Well, tell us just briefly what are you up to these days? Since the Coffee Bean and the Change Agent have been out, and the Coffee Bean for Kids, is that?
Yeah, they came out in December. So I mean, look, I've been extremely busy, just like anybody else during the pandemic. When it hit last March, my world was turned upside down. And in speaking world, every email that I opened up was someone canceled. It was a cancellation of one event after another, like 50 straight emails. I didn't want to open emails at that point, Kate. It was so bad. You know what it was like.
I feel that, yes.
And so, but I had to figure out a way to be that coffee bean inside that pot of boiling water. I was being the egg. And so I hooked up with a friend of mine that she is a educational consultant. So we started doing Zoom podcasts for free to everybody that needed one in the world. I mean, we did these all over the world, over 100 Zooms in 3 or 4 months for free, just giving away the coffee bean message. Because I thought at that point, the world was the biggest pot of boiling water ever, and the world needed the coffee bean message, but no one had any money available to pay for it. But it's one of those things, you just got to trust God. You just got to go with it. So you just went away, giving away the coffee bean message. And when the pandemic started subsiding in August, when the country started opening back up, people started reaching out to me. They're like, hey, you spoke to this group or this team, this organization. Would you come speak to our group now that we have some in-persons coming up? Or would you do a virtual with us? Because we saw you were doing all these virtual. So it's like being true to being a coffee bean was how my life is today, the busiest it's ever been. And so now today, I mean, I'm on the road constantly, and I'm out there getting to share this message with more groups and audiences than I ever had before in my life.
Yeah.
So
that's amazing. Yeah. And I sent, I don't think I told Trent this. I sent Damon a message from the plane because I saw somebody in the airport. I saw your doppelganger, and I was like, I don't think that's him, but I didn't want to, walk over, and glad I didn't. And he was kind of from far away and had a hat on. And I was like, are you traveling? He's like, no. So you have a doppelganger hiding out there. But you never know if you're going to run into John Gordon in the airport or Damon West in the airport. I think all of us, because we're just traveling so much, you never know.
Yeah. And the thing is that I've been traveling a lot since August. I've probably been on a plane every week since August. But I've taken precautions. I wear a mask, I use hand sanitizer to keep my distance. And I'm a professor here at the University of Houston downtown. Yeah. And whenever they started giving the vaccinations out to teachers and stuff like that, I went ahead and got vaccinated back in February, but I got my antibodies test done. And the antibodies test came back negative. I had never been exposed to the coronavirus the entire 6 months on the planes and traveling, but again, I was taking precautions and being very careful. My wife has an autoimmune disease. So, I mean, the last thing I want to do is bring it home to here. So, but it's been good. The country's opening back up a lot more. A lot of people have more confidence with the vaccines being out. So that's good. And it's everybody's choice what they want to do with that. But, I've chosen to go that route and be out there as much as I can, because I think the message is important. I think people need to hear it.
Yeah, definitely. Well, let's dig into, kind of what got you here. Your life took a hard left or a hard right. Or I don't know which direction, but it definitely was not a linear journey for you. And
it was a wrong turn.
It was a wrong turn followed by a right turn. I think maybe, yes, that's what it was. So, what would you call the impact moment that kind of changed your trajectory into where you are now?
Yeah, Kate, I'm thinking about that. I think there's going to be two impact moments here. One of them was, right after I was sentenced to life in prison, a jury in Dallas County, they listened to a week of testimony against me in trial. And this evidence against me was so overwhelming. I was the head of an organized crime ring of a bunch of other meth addicts. We were breaking into people's houses. And I was a meth addict too. And I went from being a stockbroker in Dallas to being a meth addict living in the streets of Dallas. And I was living in the streets when I got into crime. And in 2008, a SWAT team took me down. And in 2009, I go to trial, and the jury listened to 6 days of overwhelming evidence of my guilt. And at the end of 6 days, the jury came back in 10 minutes with their punishment. And I mean, 10 minutes is not a long time after a week of trial. This is like, if you watch Law and Order, this is going to be bad for the guy sitting at the defendant's table. And so when I came back in the courtroom, the jury sentenced me to life in prison, 65 years. 65 years in Texas is a life sentence. And so it was my first felony conviction. I'm just floored and overwhelmed. My parents get to visit with me right after the trial is over. My mom tells me, she gives me an ultimatum. She says, Damon, no gangs and no tattoos. She said, you come back as the man we raised, or don't come back at all. Wow. And so I don't know how I'm going to do this, because everybody I'm talking to in Dallas County Jail is telling me that I have to get into a gang, and that you can't survive without a gang. The gang's going to be your family. But there was this one guy in Dallas County Jail, this older black guy named Mr. Jackson. And Mr. Jackson shared with me the story about the coffee bean, because he's telling me, he's like, you can survive all this, but you're going to have to be like a coffee bean in a pot of boiling water. And he explained to me that prison is like a pot of boiling water. He said, we'll put three things in that pot of warm water: a carrot, an egg, and a coffee bean. And so he walks me through it. He said, a carrot in a pot of warm water turns soft. And that happens to people in life, Kate. But he said, you don't want to be the carrot in prison. And he said, the egg in the pot of warm water turns hard. His heart becomes hardened. If your heart becomes hardened, he said, you're incapable of giving and receiving love. And he said, if you're incapable of giving and receiving love in that place, you've become institutionalized, and you won't come back as someone your parents recognize, because your eggshell will have swastikas tattooed all over it, the gang graffiti. Yeah. And then he asked me about the coffee bean, and I had no idea, Kate, what happened to a coffee bean in a pot of warm water. And Mr. Jackson shared with me one of the most important lessons. It's really one of those pivotal moments you're talking about where my life changed, because he said the coffee bean in the pot of warm water changes the water into coffee. And he said the power was inside the coffee bean. That's how the coffee bean could change the water. And he said the only thing, by the way, that could change the water was the coffee bean, because everything else was changed by the water. The carrot was changed by the water, the egg was changed by the water, but the coffee bean changed the water to coffee. And it was this huge metaphor for life, allegory, if you will, for life, that he laid upon me, that life is a pot of boiling water. And we have three choices every day of how we're going to respond to that. We can choose to be like the carrot that lets life beat us down, turn us soft and sad and weak. And those days happen. It's your natural human emotion. We're going to have carrot days. Then there's going to be those days that make us hard and mad and mean, like the egg, like your picture that showed me being the carrot and the egg. And I told you honestly, hey, I was the egg a while ago. But but then we have that third choice, because having a bad day is a choice. We choose what kind of day we want to have, because we can start our days over anytime we want. And that third choice is to be like the coffee bean and change that pot of boiling water into a pot of coffee. So Mr. Jackson gave me the roadmap, if you will, for how I was going to get through not just prison, but life in general. And I had to go to prison and choose to be that coffee bean in a world full of eggs too, because prison, one of the last conversations I had with Jackson before the prison bus came to pick me up in August of 2009 to ship me off to TDCJ and serve my life sentence. One of the last conversations I had with Mr. Jackson, I said, man, what am I going to find more of in prison? And he fired back without hesitation. He said, eggs. He said, the egg is a natural evolution of a human being inside of a difficult situation. And you will probably become the egg too, Wes. And, Mr. Jackson was right about everything. I mean, he was right up until the point that I became the egg when I got to 2 months of violence and fighting in prison. I was becoming the egg, but I didn't want to be the egg. I had to figure out how to become that coffee bean. But you hit the nail on the head a while ago. It took a mindset shift inside of prison. I consciously say that I was going to start looking at my problem differently. And that's what we have to do in life. We have to start changing the way we see our problem, because position determines perspective, right? And the world we live in, the world we see determines the world we're going to be in. So I had to quit looking at prison as a punishment and start looking at prison as an opportunity. This took a huge mindset shift to say, hey, look, I'm serving a fresh life sentence in a maximum security level 5 penitentiary in Texas. Violence and danger is all around me, but I got to wake up every day, my feet hit the floor, and say, hey, God, thank you for this opportunity. That takes a lot of mindset.
So how do you do that? Because I think people will probably listen to that. And by the way, I don't know if are you a movie guy?
Yeah, I'm an older movie guy. Now, like if we're going to talk about Fletch and Trading Places.
Okay, yeah, those are good. No, I'm thinking, and just forgive me right now, but I'm thinking Kevin Hart and Will Ferrell.
Get Hard. I've seen pieces of Get Hard. It's pretty funny, yeah.
I'm thinking, okay, here's Mr. Jackson who's telling you need to be a coffee bean, and I'm like, I don't know. I think you needed to hire Kevin Hart to tell you how to, what gang you should be in. It's great advice, and metaphorically it sounds great, but how do you? I mean, you're saying, well, I got to look at a life sentence in prison as an opportunity. I got to be a coffee bean and not be an egg. And it's like, okay, well, that sounds really good, but how do you get up on day one and do that? And I think for anybody in life, and they get up and they go to work, or they're in whatever situation they're in, they're saying, well, that sounds great, but what does that look like? What does that look like to you?
So it took me a while to figure this out. And it didn't happen overnight. And that's the thing about it. I tell people all the time when I'm presenting to companies, groups, teams, organizations, is that success in life, there's no such thing as an overnight success. First of all, let's get that out of the way. People talk about this thing called the overnight success. There's no such thing, because success takes dedication, hard work, and commitment. That takes a lifetime of doing this kind of stuff. And like results take time to measure. You're not necessarily going to see results right away. And I learned those things inside that maximum security prison because I got up every day, and it's the same dreary dungeon that I'm waking up in every day. But in my mind, it's like I've got this chunk of 24 hours to work on myself, become the best version of myself possible, become that coffee bean. But I had to understand that there are parameters to doing this. And some of the parameters are understanding what you do and do not control. And once you can eliminate the things you do not control and focus on the things you do, that's the area where you work. And there's only 4 things I found out, by the way, that you control. Just save you the suspense. The 4 things you control in life are what you think, what you say, what you feel, and what you do. Now, that eliminates a lot of what's going on. Basically eliminates everything going on around you, and it focuses on your response to the things going on around you. The world of control that you know really is inside your head. You don't control the stuff going on around. Well, it's like during the pandemic, all this stuff is going on. We're shutting down everything left and right. And like I'm sitting here thinking, man, there's got to be a different way to do this. But the White House didn't call me. The CDC didn't call Damon West. They didn't say, hey, Damon, how do we fix this? And I had the answers, but no one called. So what am I going to do? Sit there and get mad because they're not doing no. I've got to change how I respond to what's going around because I don't control those events. It was the same thing as prison. And I'm telling you, the pandemic was the biggest test of this coffee bean philosophy outside of prison that I've ever been a part of. Because now it's like, hey, you've got this thing that got you through prison. Can you do it out here too? And of course it works. It works wherever you are. But it takes, understanding that there's only a few things you control. But also it takes understanding that you control what kind of a day you're going to have, and your positive energy is also going to impact those around you. And because, for example, your body language says a lot. You walk into a room. When I was in prison, I'd walk around prison with a smile on my face. Jackson told me, he said, man, just smile everywhere you go. Let those guys know they're not getting to you. And it worked. When I went to see parole 7 years and 3 months into my prison sentence, and I made parole, obviously, because I'm standing in front of you today. But the lady from parole asked me, she said, look, I really came here to ask you one question today. And she's telling me, she's like, we don't see a lot of people come through state prison like Damon West. She said, you had everything going for you, every advantage, every privilege, she's going over, my family life. My parents are still married to this day, Kate. I didn't come from a broken home. I had, I was a Division I college quarterback. I worked in Congress. I worked on Wall Street. But she's like, you had all that going for you and you still ended up in here. She said, but instead of letting that life sentence define you, she said, you changed yourself inside this prison. And she said, but more importantly, she said, you changed this entire prison around you. So what happened is that parole found out about the change that was going on inside this prison where I live, one of the toughest prisons in Texas, one of the toughest prisons in America, the Mark Stiles unit. But they heard about the change that was going on, and they heard where the change was coming from. This lady from parole comes to ask me this question because she's heard these stories and she wants to know. She said, my one question for you is this. She said, if you could be remembered for being anything in life, anything at all, she said, I want you to tell me what that would be in just one word, go. And man, I'm a coffee bean. That's the easiest question in the world, man. I fired back at her real quick and I said, useful. Hell, I just want to be useful, and I can be useful in prison, or I can be useful out in the free world. And I think it's that mindset of understanding that when you just want to be useful in life, your purpose is to go out there and be the best version of yourself possible, because you can be useful to other people and you can help them. And your life is about service and giving back. Then your days are going to be good. Someone once told me, Kate, it was my sponsor in recovery, said, if we could all throw our problems onto a pile and then go up to that pile and pick up someone else's problems, we'd probably all go back to the pile and pick up our own problems when you see what other people are dealing with, what they're going around.
I heard you say that. I love that.
And so it's like when I got outside of myself inside that prison is when I really got to working on becoming a servant leader, because servant leadership, I found out, was about helping other people achieve their goals, so helping to raise other people up to a different station of life. And it was whenever I became a servant leader that I became useful again. And when I'm in that mode of being useful, there doesn't really have to be a lot of big things that happen for Damon West. There has to be those things where I'm looking for in the day, those opportunities to help other people. And I would tell people also that your day starts with your mindset. And when I get up in the morning, I have one prayer that I say every day, Kate. And it's the same prayer I've been praying since I got into a 12-step program recovery in prison. And I'm still in that same 12-step program recovery. I'll be in it for the rest of my life. But it's that one prayer that I pray every morning. It's the only thing I ask God for. And I say, hey, God, put in front of me what you need me to do today for you. And let me recognize that when I see that. Amen. That's it. Because now I'm in the mode of looking for ways to serve. And I trust that in my faith, this is just I statements. In my faith, I believe that if I take care of what God needs me to do for him, then he's going to take care of my needs too. Not my wants, but my needs. And so when I got into prison and I got into this mindset of looking at ways to be of service and be useful again, my needs were met, not my wants. Of course, I want to be out of prison. Of course, I want to be free. Of course, I want to have a family one day and all that. But as I've noticed in my life, these things have been met too along the way at the right time when I let God do his job, when I let God drive that car again. So that's what I would tell people. It takes a lot of getting outside yourself and getting into the mode of being a servant leader.
Yeah. A couple of those things really jumped out at me. And it's funny because we've done a lot of these interviews for this season already that we're, getting ready to launch some of these other episodes as well. But Coach, a lot of same things are coming up, the same mindset. And I think there's a reason for that, right? Coach Hines, who we just had on, he was on our first episode, talked about how if you keep your head on a swivel, looking for ways to help people, you're going to see them, you're going to find them. And that's where the power lies. And so I thought that was cool. But I also, just thinking about how innately we need to feel like we contribute to be a part of something, to be a part of this world, to be a part of a journey, to be a part of a celebration. We need to feel like we contribute. And that's kind of that fulfillment that we get. And the really cool thing is, you're talking about servant leadership, when we help other people feel valued and get the opportunity to contribute, we actually feel that we have contributed because we have allowed other people to feel that contribution. And just that power and kind of giving away power to other people, empowering other people, fills us back up. So I always say, whatever you want, you need to give. If you want to feel more, like you contribute more, like you're more valued, show other people they're valued, help them contribute. And it comes back to you, just kind of like that boomerang. And I know we all kind of live in that mindset. John is very much like that too. You put it out in the world and it's going to come back and expand in your life.
No, you're absolutely right. And it's almost like, you look at it, the definition of being altruistic, right? You're doing something without the expectation of anything in return. But even servant leaders out there, are we really doing this with no expectation of something in return? Because in the end, we get this good feeling back from doing what we're doing. So we're feeding the very thing that we need to become the best versions of ourselves by helping other people. Yeah. But in the end, it helps us too. So it's like, and I don't think it's a selfish angle about it, but I know my life is more fulfilling and more useful when I am helping other people, when I'm out giving of myself. And I'm not going to stop feeding that, because I think that that's the best version of me possible to put forward. And, you talk about John Gordon. There's I told you there were two events that were like those pivotal fork in the road in a good way type of deal. One was Mr. Jackson sharing with me the allegory of the coffee bean, because obviously we've seen the impact of the coffee bean. But let me take you back to about 14 months out of prison. It was January of 2017. And I'm working at this law firm in Beaumont, Texas, called the Provost Humphrey Law Firm. And these folks gave me a job right out of prison. I did some legal work when I was in prison trying to get myself out. Obviously, the legal work didn't work because I made parole instead. But my legal work that I did in prison got me the job at a law firm, one of the most prestigious firms in Texas. And so I was so grateful to have this job. But I've got this amazing story, Kate, and I want to share it with college football programs, especially. But I don't know any college football coaches, and I haven't played college football since, the mid 90s at University of North Texas. No one knows who I am. So I'm at work 14 months out of prison, January of 2017. I'm at my desk at work, and this guy that's a friend of mine from the Houston media from KHOU, he calls me up. He says, Damon, he said, tonight in Houston, they've got the Bear Bryant Coach of the Year award. The best coach in America is going to be named. He said, the 8 best coaches are going to be there. Do you want to go? He said, I'll sneak you in. I was like, hell yeah, I want to go, man. I'm hungry. So I drive the 90 miles from Beaumont to Houston, and I've got this hand-me-down suit on, and I hit the ground running. And believe me, the hand-me-down suit is just a part of the story because I've been out of prison for a few months. I don't have any clothes of my own, right? So, but I'm happy. I'm grateful for what I have. So he sneaks me in the back door of the Toyota Center, hands me a press pass and says, "You're on your own. I got to go to work." So I'm getting to meet all these coaches, Kate. I mean, USC, Wisconsin, Penn State, PJ Fleck, they're all there. Yeah. And I'm getting to meet them and shake their hand. And every one of these coaches that I meet slams the door in my face. They're telling me, no, don't call us. We'll call you. Man, I get no's. It took me 1 hour to get 7 no's. 1 hour to get 7. That's like a no every 8 minutes, man.
That's a lot of no's.
Guys, they're slamming the door. I'm in the corner of the Toyota Center and I'm licking my wounds, Kate. I'm feeling sorry for myself. And I'm starting to tell myself, I'm starting to
feel like a carrot.
Yeah, no, big time carrot. And that voice in my head, I'm starting to listen to that voice in my head that says, "Damon, go home. Just quit, man." That last coach is going to tell you no. All the other coaches told you no tonight. They just beat Alabama 2 nights before. Everybody wants to talk to this coach. But man, then that voice kicked in. That voice from playing sports all my life, that voice, that competitor voice said, "You're not going to quit. You want to be a motivational speaker. What kind of motivational speaker just quits? Who wants to listen to that guy?" And
you got out of prison on a life sentence. You better not quit.
Yeah, you survived.
If I was standing there, I was like, "What are you doing?"
Yeah, it said the 2 little things on your shoulder, right? And the other one's like, "No, man, you survived prison. You survived way worse than this." Yeah, you're going to talk to that guy's going to tell you no to your face, and then you drive home the hour and a half.
Exactly. That's right. Hear the no.
So man, I stalked Dabo Swinney around that room that night. And I must look like a crazy person. And I'm hiding behind tables and I'm, the fake plants, I'm hiding behind them. And so, man, I pounce on Dabo and I give him 1 minute of my best stuff, Kate. And at the end of that minute, I take a breath and Dabo's like, "Man, you got a card on you or something, dude?" So I shoved my card.
Sorry, what?
I shoved my card in his face and his body language is terrible. He's like, "Yeah, thanks. We'll be in touch." He snatches it as he walks off. And I'm like, "Oh man, another no." But I'm telling you, Kate, I felt good about that no because I left it all on the field. Yeah. And that's what we talk about in sports, in sales. You make every call, you knock on every door, you do everything you can. And once you've done everything you do, you exhausted all your effort, then you go home and rest. Now, I went home that night and I slept like a baby. Forgot all about the night. 4 months later, I'm at my desk at that law firm again. I get an email.
4 months. That's
4 months.
Nobody would have thought anything was coming after 4 months. Come on.
Oh man, 4 months later, I get an email. Now I'm at work. I get an email, and it's got in Mike Dooley, the director of football operations at Clemson. He said, "Hey Damon, Coach Swinney met you at an award show in Houston. Would love to have you come talk to the team. Do you have August 1st open?" What, dude? I got every first.
I'm busy.
I'd have done that look around like, "Is this real?"
Yeah, I'm like, dude, I got every first up. I could be there tomorrow, dude. So August 1st, Kate, 2017, I'm going to speak to the Clemson Tigers, the defending national champions of college football. And when I got done with that presentation, Dabo's got me up against the wall. He's in my face, and Dabo's like, "Dude, that's the most amazing story I've ever heard. I've never seen my players respond like that to a speaker's story." He said, "Man, have you been to Alabama yet?" And I'm like, "No, Dabo, I've been to Clemson, dude. I haven't been anywhere, man." He said, "Well, I just text Nick Saban, so we'll see what happens." When I
just casually mentioned, okay, sure.
I just text Saban, my biggest rival.
No worries.
So when I landed in Houston the next morning from that trip to Clemson, I had a voicemail and a text message from the director of football operations at University of Alabama. It said, "Hey, we'll see you in Tuscaloosa in 3 weeks. You're on." So just like that, Dabo has kicked open the world. Yeah, I've got all these coaches calling me up. I mean, Lincoln Riley's calling me, Gary Patterson, Chip Kelly. They're calling me up and say, "Hey, Dabo gave me your number, said I need you to get to speak at my school." So just like that, the world of college football has opened up to me, right? But a year later, the big break comes. I'm at my desk at work at that law firm again, which, by the way, I don't work at the law firm anymore. So, but it's August of 2018. I'm at work and my phone rings, Kate. And on the other end of this phone is a guy named John Gordon. Now, John Gordon, I followed John Gordon at the time. He's a huge motivational speaker and all. He's the energy bus guy. The energy bus guy is on my phone, man. And it sounds like the energy bus guy because I watch his videos all the day for inspiration of my life, right? So I'm like, "Man, John, how do you know who I am, man?" He said, "Dabo Swinney." Yeah. He said, "I was just in Dabo's office and all I could do was talk about you and the coffee bean message." He said, "Damon," and John said this in 2018. He said, "The world needs the coffee bean message, Damon." He said, "Write a book with me. We'll call it the Coffee Bean. Let's deliver this message to the world." He said, "I'm telling you, God told me to give you a call." And at first, Kate, I told John, I said, "John, go write the book yourself, man. You're John Gordon. You don't need me, man. I'm just Damon West." And he said, "It won't work that way, Damon." He said, "You write the book with me or we just won't write the book at all."
Yep.
So
and that sounds like John Gordon.
Yeah, that's what he said.
Okay, here's kind of funny other side. I was at one of the very first, when we launched Power Positive Leadership as a training program. We started doing those live trainings. So we had just started launching these, and I think it might have even been the first one after the initial train the trainer. And this is how I found out about you, because he was standing up and talking about how his next book was going to be The Coffee Bean. And he said, I got connected to this guy, Damon West, through Dabo Sweeney, and he told a little bit about your story. And so that is how I was introduced to your story.
Wow.
Was through that interaction, because I was there, because I go to all those live events. And so that's how I learned about you. And I immediately left and I bought the Change Agent on the way home. And so that's how I learned your story.
Wow, that's so cool. Okay,
there's the beginning of that. Yeah.
How it all works. That's so wild. Yeah, I mean, look, John had never read The Change Agent until after The Coffee Bean was getting ready to come out. He finally was like, maybe I should read this guy's backstory. He didn't really know.
I should find out.
And then when he read it, when the Coffee Bean is about to come out in like 6 weeks, he finally read my story. He's like, dude, I got to have you on my podcast. We got to talk about all this stuff. But that one yes from Dabo Sweeney in that room that night in Houston, Texas, in January of 2017, that one yes, which Kate, I was so certain was going to be a no, right? That one yes changed my life. It changed the trajectory of my life. And literally, it put me on a different path, because if I don't stick around that room that night, if I quit, if I listen to that voice that says, go home, just quit, Damon, then you don't know who Damon West is. The world may not have the Coffee Bean message. And none of this stuff that's going on in my life has happened because Dabo Sweeney changed my life. Dabo Sweeney, and I tell salespeople all the time this story, because if you put in the work, if you're willing to make the calls and knock on every door, there's going to be that one client out there that you connect with that opens up their Rolodex to you and changes your life too. Your Dabo Sweeney moment is one person away, but you can't quit before the miracle happens. You've got to stay in the game, because once you quit, the only question you know the answer to is the one you don't ask. That's a no. So if you're not in the room to ask the question, it's going to be a no every time.
I like to tell people in sales that, because you get no's, you get so many no's, and the ratio is, usually 9 out of 10, right? So you figure you make 10 calls and you're going to get 9 no's before you get a 10th yes. And so I tell people that yes is actually spelled with 9 silent no's in front of it. And so you're really, those no's aren't no's. They're just, it's just the slow yes that's coming, and you just got to keep going. Stop taking it as a rejection. You're just you're getting pulled a little bit closer to whatever's coming your way. And you never know what that opportunity is. And the funny thing is, sometimes those no's, he took that card and walked off. It looks like a no. And either they come forward or they say, well, it was not a right fit for me, but here's this connection to someone else. And that opens the door. And, the same thing with John. A lot of people think, well, Kate just somehow shows up on the scene. She wrote a book with John, and it, happened overnight. And I'm like, for 7 years, I sent John ideas. 7 years. I don't think he opened 90% of them. He was just like, no, not the right fit, not the right time. This isn't it. Sometimes they were polite. Sometimes it was like, what are you doing? Why are you sending me this? And I was like, I'm just going to keep sending him stuff. One of these is going to hit. And then I was at his house and I put it in front of him and I said, read that. You can read it by the time I get out of here, you'll be able to read it. It's nice and short. And I'm in the car driving home and I get a phone call and he says, this is it. This is the one, and it's 7 years. People are like, oh, I want to write a book with John. Well, if you have 7 years, maybe it'll happen. But it is about, if it's your mission, if it's your, if it's your purpose, if you're meant to live it and you're passionate about it, then you have to do it either way. And if you're supposed to be out there doing it, it's a message that's supposed to be heard, then it's going to get picked up by the right person at some point. I truly believe that.
And no one's gonna look after your dreams and your goals and your ambitions. No one's gonna look after that like you will, Kate. No one is gonna nurture that stuff like you will. And if you don't do it, it's not gonna get done. And that's the thing. 7 years it took you to get John to say that one yes. And it's like John's story about how many times the energy bus got turned down. I can tell you the same, a similar story about the Change Agent. 15 or 16 publishers shot it down, and finally Division of Simon Schuster said go. And now it's going to be a movie. I mean, so as you just never know where that yes is going to be, but you can't give up. You can't quit. That's the one thing you can't do. One of my clients, Kate, is the U.S. Army. And I go into an Army base every month, and I go in there and I train them on resilience, the Coffee Bean mindset. But since I'm on the base for several days at a time, I talked to the commanding general and to let me go into PT and basic training every single
I've seen
morning.
you doing these.
Yes.
So cool. Yeah.
I'm 45 years old. I'm doing combat training with these guys. I'm fighting with them. I'm running with them. I'm doing their work. I'm doing their tests with them.
Yeah.
And he's like, man, he's telling me at first, he's like, dude, you're 45 years old. You're a trainer. You don't have to do that. I said, yeah, but what if I did, man? What kind of respect could I earn from these men and women if I walk in their boots? Maybe they'll walk in my shoes. And I said, besides, General, I don't have to come in first when I finish every morning. I just have to finish. That's it. I just got to drag my butt across the line every single one. And some days that's it, man. I'm just barely dragging across that line, but I can't quit. You can't quit. You can never quit, Kate.
How important is that? You know, and I know you're a fitness guy. I know my journey in fitness has been really important to me too. Physically, I mean, mentally, you know, we had COVID. We have all these things that come up against us that are going to test us to be a coffee bean and to test kind of what we're preaching and what we're sharing with the world. How important has it been to you to physically also push yourself to kind of keep you sharp in that way? Has that helped you think?
Yeah, no, I do. It works on your discipline. Like I tell everybody, every day you got to work out in yourself in 3 areas: spiritually, mentally, and physically. My job, what I do, takes me on the road a lot. It really tests that mindset of working out physically, because you're on the road, you're traveling all the time, you don't feel like working out. And there's some days that I don't. There's some days that I put it off, and I always regret it. I've never regretted getting up and working out. Never, not one time have I regretted that I went out there and did that. But I have regretted the times that I didn't do it, because I feel like it's a wasted opportunity, because once your day is gone, it's gone. But staying on top of my physical health, it's so important to me, because I remember being in prison, and there were guys in there that I would try to get them to come out to the rec yard and run with me, or just do anything to be physical. These guys are morbidly obese, massive guys. And I'm like, guys, listen, man, you got all this time to work on yourself. Let's go do some workout. Oh, no, Wes, man, when I get out of prison one day, I'll get a gym membership. I'll take care. No, you won't. No, you won't, because life is going to be too fast. And you're sitting here in this prison. You're creating habits in your life right now, whether you know it or not. You're creating, every day that you're alive, you're creating habits in your life. And some habits are good, but some habits are bad. If you get into a cycle where you just stop, you just give up on your physical well-being, that's going to become a habit. You know, the longer you don't do that, the harder it is for you to actually go back and start doing that again. So
Impact.
So yeah, taking care of your physical self is important.
Gosh, I mean, can you imagine? I'm just trying to like absorb this impact and the change in your life is like black and white. I mean, can you imagine going back to yourself in prison? I was imagining going back and telling my past self, kind of like, hey, here's where you are right now, and here's what you're doing, and my other self being like, no way. You know, go back to yourself in prison and be like, hey, this is my wife and my daughter now. Like, can you just imagine going back and like learning that that's where you're headed?
No, I don't think I would have believed it in there. I mean, because one of the things that sometimes getting through there was just getting through it each day at a time. Sometimes it was 20 minutes at a time, but it gave me a lot of life lessons to understand how to get through a tough day. I tell people all the time that my worst day out here in the free world is better than my best day in prison. So life gives us a lot of perspective. But could I have ever believed that this was going to be my life if you'd have told me when I was in prison? The answer would be absolutely no. I mean, I've got more in my life now than I ever had all that time before, that I thought I was really living life, because back then I was trying to be in control of everything. And now I just allow things to happen, and I just work on those areas where I control. But man, there's no way, Kate, there's no way you could have shown me a glimpse of my life from prison. It's interesting because when I go into prisons all over America now, and I share, this message, this experience, strength, and hope with the men and women that are locked up in prisons all over America. And it never fails, Kate. Every time I get done, there's always going to be a man or a woman that's incarcerated that'll come up to me afterwards and say, hey, Damon, man, your story's great, man. Some of the stuff that's happened in your life, it's hard to believe. But man, of all the things you've done in your life, I want to know how you did that. And they point to my wedding ring.
Yeah.
They point to my wedding ring. They say, how did you find someone that would love you again, that would take you in with all the mistakes you made in life? Because when you're in prison, and I remember being in prison, laying in that bunk thinking, man, will I ever have someone that will love me? Look at me and all the baggage I bring into life. Because at the core of being a human being, Kate, everybody wants to belong and be loved. That's what we all want as human beings. And even the men and women that are serving time in prison, they want to belong and be loved. And they hear a story of this guy with all this stuff going on in my life, Kate. I mean, if you're in prison and you're looking at a guy like me, you're like, oh my God, that's the most amazing story I've ever heard. I would love to have 1/10 of what he's got. No, those men and women in prison, they hear that story. You know, a lot of them want to know, how did I find someone that would love me again?
Yeah.
All that other stuff is window dressing to just being loved, belong and be loved. That's it.
Yeah, that's incredible. And two things that pop out to me from that. One is, that journey that I'm sure you had to take of learning how to love yourself so that you can allow somebody else to love you, and that you can accept that love is I think a big part of what stops people, when they come out of just traumatic situations and things that they go through. And the other side of that is, I think a lesson that people can really take away from what you were just talking about is that you don't have to be able to see exactly what it's going to look like, because it's probably better than you imagine. It's probably more incredible than you imagine if you have the faith and you believe that there is a positive future ahead for you, and that it's probably even bigger than you can paint for yourself. Just like you said, you didn't know what it was going to look like. You would have probably never painted this much into that picture. But it's there. You got to believe. You got to put one foot in front of another, and you got to keep working towards it, and let it come in, and just welcome it as it comes towards you, and use it the best that you can. Because I think a lot of people get stuck on not being able to see it.
Yeah, but you bringing that up reminds me of something. And I listen to a lot of motivational speakers on social media. One of them is Steve Harvey, and so I listened to Steve Harvey, and he was talking about something. And I'm paraphrasing what he said. I'm not quoting him exactly, but it's kind of what you're talking about. It's almost like, to paraphrase what he was talking about. If someone could have showed me, Kate, before I went into prison, if someone could have showed me before I got into drugs and my life really spun out of control, right before that moment, if someone could have showed me when I was a stockbroker in Dallas and I'm out partying, I'm doing drugs, I'm chasing women all the time, money is my God, and this is right before I get introduced to meth. If someone could have showed that guy the picture of the life that I have right now and all the success and on every level that's going on in my life, if someone could have came back and showed me that guy and said, hey, what do you think about that? Do you want that? And if I'd have said, hey, yeah, that's what I want. But if they showed me what I had to go through to get to it, that would be the thing to be like, oh, hell no, I don't want to do that.
Yeah, I'm good. Yeah, we would have picked it, wouldn't we?
Yeah, you mean I gotta become homeless, and I gotta be a burglar, and I gotta negatively impact a lot of lives. Then I'm gonna go to prison, and I'm gonna fight for my life, and I gotta live in this dungeon to get to there? No, I don't want to do that. And that's the thing, if someone showed you the process that you're gonna have to go through to put in the work, because there's no such thing as an overnight success. If someone showed you the process, you'd probably run away and hide from it, because it's too scary to think about the process that we have to go through to be what we're destined to be. But if you'll just trust the process and go along with it, then it's not as scary, But yeah, if I'd have looked at the process, like, hell no, there's no way I'm doing that.
That's like, for me, that's even hitting me, because I just, over the last 2 years, I've been through so much, and just thinking about how, the pains and the things that we're going through really are a gift. And sometimes you're trying to force yourself to go, okay, I know that this is a gift, I'm supposed to learn something from this. But if you were to really go back and look at it the way you just described, go back to before all this pain started and say, this is where you could be. Are you willing to go through this? The gift of not knowing, what you're about to go through is actually really powerful. I mean, that actually just kind of shifted something in my head. So that's really cool. I love that.
Yeah, because I think most of us would say, hey, there's no way. I'm not signing up for that. I got this normal, life over here. I think this is good enough over here. You would settle in that other life and be just fine. But I think that's what happens in a lot of people's lives. I think they get a glimpse of what it's going to take to go out there and chase your dream, and they get knocked down. They let life knock them down, and they give up, and they quit before the miracle happens. That's the thing about, you can't quit before the miracle happens, because you get down, you face a struggle, but growth takes place outside your comfort zone, Kate. And no one ever grew, being comfortable, because growth is an ugly thing sometimes. Growth, there's painful, there's a horrible thing. You see different things about people. You see things about yourself you don't like when you're growing. But that's the whole point. You get past something. It's a process you have to go through. And a lot of people step into the process and it's too much for them and they back off. They haven't even seen how much more they have to grow.
You have to finish it. You got to get to the other side. One of the things that John, so my word this year was bloom. And the, when I first met John back in like 2013, I just have been through a series of things. And I said, John, I can't take this anymore. There's just so much stuff going on. And he said, you're being pruned. And I'm like, I don't know. What do you mean? My mom was a gardener. So I'm like, okay, I know what being pruned means. You go out and at the end of the season, and you cut everything down to the nub, basically. And you do that because it's going to grow back stronger and better, on the other side of it. And he said, you're being pruned. He said, it hurts and it's ugly and it doesn't make any sense, because why would you take this, okay looking plant and cut it down to a nub, where it doesn't look very good. And he said, you're being pruned so that you can come back stronger and better, and things are going to be far greater on the other side. And you have to allow yourself to be pruned, and then you have to allow yourself to grow and to step into that. And then when you're ready, you have to accept blooming and take that space and live it. And that was why I chose bloom for this year. So I thought, wow, what a great year to decide, all right, I feel ready. I feel like I've been pruned. I feel like I've come back, and now I'm ready to go and put myself out there.
So your word wasn't inimitable? That wasn't your word for the year?
That's Trent's word.
That's my word.
Trent introduced me, and I'm still trying to say it.
I'm telling you, man, and I've heard the word before, man. When I started getting the emails, I'm like, oh, I got to practice saying this before I get.
Everybody does.
Sound like everyone else.
Let's hear it. Can you say it? Let's see.
Inimitable.
Oh, that's pretty good. Trent, tell him where the word came from, Trent.
So I don't know if you're a big Hamilton fan.
Alexander Hamilton.
Yeah, the play.
Oh, I haven't seen the play. I would love to see it though.
Yeah, it's one of the songs in there. The guy goes, "I'm inimitable. I'm one of a kind. I'm an original." I heard the word. And I was like, I had to go look it up quick. And I was like, man, I love that word. And just ever since then, I got my license plate done with it. So it's just been one of those words I've been living by lately. Just kind of.
That's cool.
Being original,
This is literally his license plate.
I love that, dude.
I was driving behind him and I took a picture of it. So I tell the cops, if you see this guy, just go ahead and pull him over in Minnesota. That's him.
It's interesting that no one else has taken that, by the way, too, Trent. I mean, it's like it's not a new word.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
I'm living by that though. That's why I tell my kids to be inimitable, be one of a kind. Just be who you are.
I like it. It's a lot of vowels, but I like it.
It's very true.
But it's all the same lines that, when you hear something that moves you, that's the thing. That's what life's all like. And I tell people all the time, man, you're going to come across quotes. And I tell people, find a favorite quote, a quote that moves you, man. It's something that you read and you're like, oh my God, that is like, it's almost like the reaction you had a while ago to the looking back on life and seeing the roadmap of what you're going to have to go through, Kate. You're like, wow, okay, that kind of shifted something. There's going to be quotes. There's going to be words that shift you. I came across a quote when I was in prison. I was reading a book by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And the book, I've actually got the book up here. The book is called Strength to Love. And what it was is a bunch of Dr. King's sermons, right? And so there was a sermon in there, and it was called The Death of Evil Upon the Seashore. I remember the name of the sermon. I remember where I was and I read it. And I'm in a cell reading this thing, The Death of Evil Upon the Seashore. And he talks about a guy in there named Charles A. Beard. Charles A. Beard was a 20th century historian. And this is the middle part of the 20th century, the 1950s, around that time. And he said, this guy was so famous for knowing all the events in time in history. Everything that's happened in history, he could tell you. Huge historian. Somebody one day asked Charles A. Beard, what lessons has history taught you? So here's this famous, knowledgeable historian. And this guy wants to know, what lessons have you learned from history? His answer became my favorite quote. Charles A. Beard said, there are four lessons that history has taught me. He said, first, whom the gods would destroy, they must first make mad with power. Second, the mills of God grind slowly, yet they grind exceedingly small. Third, the bee fertilizes the flower that it robs. And fourth, when it is dark enough, you can see the stars. That's it.
Wow.
Think about that. Now, Trent's over there just like I can see
that first part of that quote. Our head coach at North says that all the time to the kids. The ones that the gods destroyed, made angry.
First, whom the gods would destroy, they must first make mad with power. The history is littered.
Yep. He uses that all the time.
Despots and tyrants that had this domination thing. And But not just that, but people that thought they had power over the people, and they always get crushed by their own drive, their own lust for power, right? The mills of God grind slowly, yet they grind exceedingly small. Man, life is a marathon, not a sprint, man. Exceedingly small, man. Yeah, life takes a long time to live, but at the end of their life, that's when you really show what it was all about. The mills of God the mills of God do grind slowly. The bee fertilizes the flower that it robs. Man, that's servant leadership. Because he's saying that even in nature, the bee that's going to steal from this flower, the pollen from this flower, is going to pollinate the rest of the flowers around it, because he can't just be a taker in life. He's got to give back too. You can't be a taker. And when it's dark enough, you can see the stars. That's the big part about it right there. That's the big nudge in the whole lesson, is that when we're at our darkest, when things seem like they can't get any worse, when we can't get up and take that next step, in life and every day, that's when we have a chance to shine our brightest. That's where we're on the precipice of that big growth in our life. Only when it's dark enough can you see the stars, and only when it's dark enough in your life can you shine your brightest. So Trent, when I heard that quote, it was one of those moments, like your inimitable moment. It's like, whoa, I wrote it down. It was in the prison cell with me. I carried it around in my pocket. I memorized it. It's still on my wall here. I mean, I've got the book here. Yeah, I get it.
Yeah, that's so cool. Yeah, when we were talking about what are we going to name this, and we were like inimitable, but nobody's going to be able to say it. But we thought, there's so many. We're looking up all these words, this impact and that impact, and everything's out there. And I thought, man, I don't want to just talk about an impact. I don't want to, because anybody can. All right, I can leave an impact, or it looks, it's the same as this person. What's the difference? And you know what? The truth is, each of us has a unique story that we decide we write every single day, and each of us has a unique impact that we can share on the world. And if we don't share our impact story, nobody else can, because nobody else has the same story that we have. They may have similar elements, but they don't have the same perspective and the same story and the same experiences that you've had. And so each of us has something to contribute, just like that bee, right? Each of us has something to contribute that is going to give back to the world. And if we stay silent, you take that to the grave, it doesn't escape you after that. You got to put it out there. We have to do it now. As someone who has, faced my own mortality of pulmonary embolism and dealt with that, I know that time is finite. I know that we have a bank of unknown amounts of minutes, and that we need to spend them wisely, and we need to spend them now, and we need to make them count. So I think that's so important. And I feel like there's so many clips out of here. I'm already like, okay, I'm going to clip all this stuff out. So thank you so much for everything that you have shared today. And I actually got to hear some new stuff, which is cool, because I've heard a lot of your awesome coffee bean story stuff, but I love getting to hear some new parts of that. Trent, what do you think?
I just got one question. So I coach high school basketball.
Okay.
We got our captains the coffee bean book. And what advice would you have to high school kids, like athletes, to pay forward? Just because sometimes being a coffee bean in high school, it's kind of a hard situation for some kids. What advice would you have for the kids that are trying to be a coffee bean or trying to change the environment they're in?
Yeah. So you're talking about for high school athletes?
Yeah. Yep.
Trent, I always tell high school athletes, and all athletes in general, that you're different. You're different. You're made from something different, because not everybody can be an athlete. Not everybody's willing to be an athlete, by the way. Not everybody's willing to put in the work that it takes to be an athlete. And then there's going to be those really great athletes that are willing to put in even more work. But I tell them all the time. Now, with that comes a lot of responsibility. And the responsibility is this: you're a very visible person. You're an athlete out there. And a lot of people look up to athletes. We do that in our society. We put athletes up on a pedestal, and that pedestal requires some responsibilities. So it is incumbent upon athletes, I think, to go out there and be that example of what we're supposed to be every day, because they're the most visible people out there in these schools for the most part. And go out there and practice servant leadership. Find other people to help out every day. And when you've got some free time, some downtime, go volunteer in your community, man. We are lacking in a lot of communities the younger role models that we once had. A lot of the younger generation stays indoors and they play on devices and stuff like that. They're not outside. They're not visible enough. I tell athletes, get visible, man. I'm going to tell you a little story about that real quick too, Trent. Is Devo and I have become really close friends, and I'll go into Clemson and watch games. And when I do that, I stay with he and Kathleen. and I go to church with Dabo on Sundays after a football game. And man, the coolest thing in the world is to be in Clemson, South Carolina, the Sunday after a big Saturday game, go to church with Dabo. First of all, when you go into church, you see all the football team is in that church. I mean, they're all over the place, man. Trevor Lawrence is in there. I mean, all these guys are in the church. And when church is over, everybody's just hanging out and talking. There's Trevor Lawrence standing out there in the lobby of the church, and Dabo Swinney, the number 1 draft pick, and everybody knows 2 years ago, this guy's going to be the number 1 draft pick, and everybody knows this is one of the best coaches ever in the history of college football, and nobody is mobbing these guys. Nobody's coming up, oh my God, can I get your autograph? You know why? Because they see them out in the community all the time. Seeing Dabo Swinney and Trevor Lawrence at church is not a big deal, because Dabo Swinney and Trevor Lawrence can be seen all over the Clemson community every day, because they're servant leaders. They're out there in their communities, and people have gotten to know them already. No one's just starstruck by seeing them. And I tell these athletes all the time, man, get out there and be seen, man. Get out there and be visible.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, like almost, normalize being out there and serving and helping other people. And I like kind of just thinking about kind of just ingraining them. This is, part of the privilege that comes with being an athlete is to help lead and serve others and to be that coffee bean. And so rather than, okay, it might be uncomfortable or it may not feel cool, it's just, this is just part of what we do, which I think Davo's so good about, defining in culture. This is how we do things here. And this is what it means to be an athlete. And if you have a great coach that can ingrain that into the athletes from the beginning, this is a part of it.
And it's helping to prepare them for a life after sports, because the reality is not everybody's going to go play college ball. And then the reality about that is very few are ever going to play pro ball. Right. So, but it's helping to prepare them for a life after sports and teaching those lessons. That's what's so good about sports, is sports teaches us all these lessons in life. There's so much that I learned about life from playing sports and being around coaches. Coaches were so impactful in my life. And that's the thing that these kids understand, that being a servant leader was way more important than being the starting point guard or being the starting center on a basketball team. Being the servant leader, being the guy that the community says that's a good person, most important thing there is. And you're teaching them at a young age. And I think that's great. And it's funny, like we talk about the Clemson thing. I like it, the whole experience of seeing that happen in real time was like Dabo was like the high school coach in a country town, and Trevor was like the quarterback of the high school, because no one mobs the high school coach on Sunday at church. They all see him and they say hello, hey coach, great game. And that's what they were doing at Clemson. They're saying, walking by Trevor, they're just walking by, hey, great game, Trevor, great game, coach. Like they're the high school head coach and quarterback, but it's because they're so visible.
Yeah, and relatable, which is so awesome. Vulnerable, relatable, all those things, and solid and
authentic, all those things. Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, I love that. Well, thank you so much for taking your time out and sharing all these great nuggets of knowledge. And this is great. This is really awesome. I appreciate it.
Thanks for your time today, Kate. Thanks, Trent, and thanks for giving me the backstory on the word inimitable.
There you go.
There you go. You got it. Awesome. Thanks, Damon.
All right. Thanks a lot, y'all.
All right.